You know, usually when we talk about heartbreak, there is this massive cultural expectation of profound poetic devastation.
Oh, absolutely. The romanticization of grief, it is everywhere.
Right. We have all been trained by like a century of cinema to envision the weeping, the tearing up of old handwritten letters.
The dramatic stares out of a rain-streaked window while a slow indie track plays.
Yes, exactly. We are conditioned to view a broken heart as this catalyst for high tragedy, like it's supposed to elevate us.
Right, we collectively buy into the idea that losing love pushes us onto this elevated plane of suffering.
Exactly.
The pain is supposed to be beautiful and sweeping and all-consuming. It's an idea that honestly dates back to the Romantic poets. This notion that agony refines the human spirit and turns us into these tragic, ethereal figures.
But then, you step into the real unvarnished world of modern dating, and you look at a post-breakup landscape, and suddenly all that sweeping poetry just vanishes in an instant.
It really does. It evaporates.
Right, because instead of tragic art, you are confronted with a reality that is, quite honestly, delightfully and hilariously petty.
Oh, the mundane revenge of it all.
Yes, you aren't standing in the rain mourning the lost potential of a soulmate. You are sitting on your couch, furiously thumbing through text messages, violently plotting how to get your kitchen appliances back from your ex's apartment.
That is the absolute definition of displacement.
Yeah.
Psychologically speaking, it is such a fascinating tactic.
Really? Tell me more about that.
Well, we project all of our complicated, messy grief onto a singular, tangible object, like a toaster, a blender, maybe a favorite hoodie.
Because the big feelings are just too much.
Precisely. Processing the complete dissolution of a shared future is totally overwhelming to the human nervous system.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But demanding the return of a $90 kitchen appliance, that is an actionable goal. Gives you the illusion of control in a situation where you otherwise feel entirely powerless.
Wow. Okay. And exactly that instinct, that perfectly petty, incredibly human, deeply grounded defense mechanism is exactly where we are starting today. Welcome to today's deep dive.
It is going to be a really good one.
It really is. If you are someone who loves to learn, who thrives on gathering new perspectives and untangling the messy, often contradictory webs of human psychology, you are going to find today's exploration absolutely fascinating.
We are getting into some really complex territory today.
We are. We are stepping into the world of fiction, diving into the contemporary romance novel Love Song by Elle Kennedy.
But we should probably give some context on her for anyone who might not be familiar with her broader catalog.
Oh, for sure. She is a New York Times, USA Today, and Wall Street Journal best-selling author. She's from the suburbs of Toronto and has over 50 contemporary fiction and romance novels under her belt.
Including the massive off-campus series, which is just huge.
Huge. And the reason we are exploring this specific text isn't just to, recap a love story. That's not what we do here.
No, definitely not.
We're going to deconstruct the anatomy of this narrative to explore the intensely complicated psychology of the muse.
Which is such a loaded concept.
So loaded. Plus the crushing weight of childhood baggage in our adult relationships and the vulnerable, often dangerous intersection of art and romance.
You know, the landscape of contemporary romance is often mischaracterized as purely escapist. But authors like Elle Kennedy utilize the framework of the genre to dissect incredibly relatable human anxieties.
Yeah, she doesn't pull any punches when it comes to the emotional reality of her characters.
Not at all. She built her career by grounding high-stakes, soul-crushing emotional arcs in details that are almost uncomfortably real.
Like the toaster.
Exactly like the toaster.
Yeah.
She understands that the catalyst for profound character growth rarely starts with a grand philosophical epiphany. It usually starts with something frustratingly pedestrian.
Okay, let's unpack this right away. Because what I absolutely love about her approach in this book is how the explosive chemistry of the present timeline is inextricably linked to the baggage of the past.
You really can't separate the two.
You can't. You cannot look at the present-day dynamic between our two main subjects without digging into the absolute bedrock of their childhood friendship.
Right. To understand why they're colliding so violently now, we have to profile who they are and the history they are carrying.
So let's do that. Let's start with Blake.
Okay, so we're dealing with two very distinctly drawn psychological profiles here. First, Blake Logan. She is 20 years old, leaning toward 21.
And she is fiercely independent.
Fiercely, proudly introverted, deeply sarcastic. She is the kind of person who actively avoids the spotlight.
Which is such a relatable trait for so many people.
Totally. Her ideal Saturday does not involve a crowded party. It involves retreating into a solitary world, listening to a podcast, or getting lost in a book. She finds safety in the background.
And then on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, we have Wyatt Graham.
Wyatt is a whole different ballgame.
He really is. So he is 24. He is a musician who actively rejected the traditional path. He skipped college entirely to move to Nashville and chase a highly volatile dream in the music industry.
Which takes a very specific kind of risk tolerance.
Right. And crucially, for our psychological analysis, he carries a reputation. He is notoriously avoidant of any long-term emotional commitment.
I mean, his own twin sister affectionately refers to him as a fuckboy till he dies.
Which tells you everything you need to know. He has built an entire identity around the idea that he is designed for a good time, not a long time. He is a wanderer.
But the tension here isn't just born from the classic introvert meets extroverted wanderer dynamic.
Yeah?
It is amplified tenfold by their inescapable lifelong proximity.
Because this isn't just a chance meeting at a coffee shop.
No, not at all. Their fathers, John Logan and Garrett Graham, have been best friends since college. They are practically a single-family unit.
Which means Blake and Wyatt have grown up directly in each other's orbits. They've shared major holidays, vacations, milestones.
They have a front-row seat to every awkward phase and every mistake the other has ever made.
And this shared history creates a pressure cooker, culminating in what I like to call the inciting trauma.
That's a great term for it.
And look, I use the word trauma playfully in the context of a teenager's life, but if you think back to when you were 16 years old...
Oh, everything feels like life or death at 16.
Exactly. You know, this kind of social rejection leaves genuine, lasting psychological scars. We have to rewind to a New Year's Eve party. Blake is 16, Wyatt is 20.
Developmentally speaking, the gap between 16 and 20 is an absolute canyon.
It's massive.
It really is. At 16, your emotional regulation is still incredibly volatile. You're seeking validation, you're forming your romantic identity, and you are intensely vulnerable to the perceptions of older peers.
So Blake, fueled by like a single glass of champagne and years of quiet observation, works up the terrifying courage to confess a massive, agonizing crush to Wyatt.
And his reaction is the ultimate nightmare scenario.
It is so brutal to read.
He doesn't just let her down easy. He laughs.
Which is the worst possible response.
It really is. Now, it's not a malicious, villainous laugh, but a nervous, instinctive laugh that absolutely gets her on the spot.
And then he delivers the fatal blow. The moment that annihilates her self-esteem and cements her entire worldview regarding their dynamic.
He reaches out, he ruffles her hair like she's a toddler, and he calls her kid.
Oh.
He says, probably best to get over that, kid.
I physically cringed when I read that.
That single three-letter word completely restructures their relationship.
How so?
Well, kid is the ultimate neutralizing label. By deploying that word, Wyatt entirely strips Blake of any agency, any budding sexuality, and any emotional maturity. It is a psychological barrier.
He puts her in a box.
Exactly. Blake instantly buries her humiliation deep in her psyche, learning that vulnerability leads to being infantilized. And Wyatt, consciously or subconsciously, uses that barrier to keep his own world safe.
Because if she's a kid, he doesn't have to deal with her as a woman.
Right. He categorizes her in a box marked childhood friend's daughter to ensure he never has to navigate any messy, complicated feelings.
So fast forward to the present day, 4 years later. We find ourselves in a spectacular, sprawling summer house in Lake Tahoe.
The setting is so important here.
The entire extended family is crammed together for a vacation. But the realities Blake and Wyatt are both facing have dramatically shifted. The armor they've been wearing is starting to crack.
Let's look at Wyatt first.
Yeah, let's talk about where he's at.
He has been grinding away in Nashville for 6 years, and he is facing a severe, agonizing creative block. His career hasn't exploded the way he envisioned.
He gets streams, he books small gigs, but he is not, playing stadiums.
Right. He is creatively and spiritually starving.
And that has to mess with your head.
Oh, the psychological toll of artistic stagnation cannot be overstated for someone whose entire identity is wrapped up in their creative output.
Because if he isn't making music, who is he?
Exactly. Wyatt feels time slipping away. He articulates this bizarre, disorienting nature of time feeling like he was just an ambitious 18-year-old yesterday, and suddenly he is staring down 25 with no major legacy to show for it.
That quarter-life crisis is So real.
It is. He feels like a failure, and that vulnerability makes his usual defense mechanisms incredibly fragile.
Meanwhile, Blake is arriving in Tahoe carrying her own fresh baggage. She is recovering from a recent relationship with a guy named Isaac Grant.
Oh, Isaac.
Yeah, Isaac. Now, Isaac is a football player at Briar University, and he is heading straight for the NFL.
He is flashy, he is outgoing, he is an absolute attention seeker.
He is the guy who demands the spotlight that Blake instinctively hates.
Oh, and he also happens to be a cheater.
A very important detail. He is continually referred to throughout the text as the guy with the mullet, which paints a very vivid, somewhat tragicomic picture.
The choice of Isaac as a partner is incredibly revealing about Blake's internal state, though.
Right, because they seem like total opposites. Why does a fiercely introverted, observant young woman choose an attention-seeking, flashy athlete?
Because it is safe.
Wait, really? Safe how?
Well, choosing someone who constantly needs to be the center of attention allows Blake to comfortably hide in the background. It is a relationship of convenience that doesn't require her to be truly seen or vulnerable.
That makes perfect sense. She gets to exist in his shadow. And this brings us back to my favorite detail, the one we opened the show with.
The toaster.
The toaster. Blake is not sitting in her bedroom in Tahoe crying over Isaac. We get to see her actual text messages with him. He is sending these pathetic, groveling lines like, I made a mistake and I don't want you back, but...
And her response is just iconic.
She ignores the emotional bait entirely. She just types, I just want my fucking toaster.
It brilliantly illustrates her pragmatism. She refuses to romanticize a relationship that fundamentally did not serve her. She recognizes the cheating as a clean break.
She's just over it.
She is. However, we have to look deeper. The hyperfixation on the toaster also highlights a lingering protective shell.
How so?
She is focusing on the practical appliance.
Yeah.
Because engaging with the emotional failure of the relationship, acknowledging that she chose a partner who didn't respect her, would require self-reflection she isn't ready for yet.
Oh, wow. So the toaster is a shield.
Yes, exactly.
So we have Wyatt, who is creatively desperate, and Blake, who is emotionally guarded and demanding the return of her kitchenware. And they are suddenly thrust into this shared summer house.
Right back into close proximity.
I want to look at how Wyatt perceives Blake now that she is 20, because being seen as the kid by someone you've grown up with is like trying to update your computer's operating system, but the other person's device stubbornly refuses to recognize the new software.
That's a great analogy.
You have completely changed. Your interface is different, your processing power is stronger, you have entirely new capabilities, but they just keep giving you an error message. How hard is it to overwrite a first impression that was formed when you were literally a child?
Taking that operating system analogy a step further, the real issue isn't just the software update. It's that Wyatt's internal firewall is actively treating her new identity like a virus. The text makes it explicitly clear that Wyatt isn't blind to her physical maturation. We are given access to his internal monologue, and he is acutely, uncomfortably aware of her body.
He notices everything.
He does. He notices the shadow of her pink panties beneath her white shorts. He notices the specific way her wet hair clings to her shoulders after swimming. He constantly has to run a manual override in his brain, repeating the mantra, she's 20, she's not a kid anymore.
Right. His biology is recognizing the new software, but his logical brain is desperately trying to hit cancel update.
Precisely. His refusal to acknowledge her as a viable romantic option is a highly calibrated, deeply ingrained defense mechanism.
Because if he goes there, everything changes.
If he acknowledges her as an option, he risks destroying the sacred foundational dynamic between their fathers. But even more selfishly, he protects his own carefully constructed identity.
Because he's the wanderer.
Exactly. If he touches Blake Logan, he knows he won't be able to just walk away after a few weeks. She represents a level of emotional entanglement, of historical weight, that terrifies an avoidant personality.
He needs to keep her neatly categorized as off-limits so his entire worldview doesn't collapse. But the problem with suppressing something that forcefully is that it inevitably creates intense pressure.
And pressure always finds a release.
Always. And Wyatt's desperate need for artistic inspiration is the exact thing that cracks his firewall wide open.
To understand the magnitude of this crack, we have to fully explore the psychology of the muse.
Which is such a fascinating topic.
It really is. Wyatt is in a state of absolute creative panic, and he has resorted to extreme, almost punishing measures to fix his writer's block. He reveals that his mentor, a veteran producer named Cole, advised him to embrace self-imposed celibacy.
Which sounds completely wild for a 24-year-old musician in Nashville.
It does, but it actually taps into a very old, deeply rooted psychological theory. This is essentially a modern application of Freudian sublimation.
Okay, remind me how that works.
The theory suggests that you can take primal, physical libido sexual energy and redirect it into higher, more civilized pursuits, like creating art.
Oh, so like bottling it up so it explodes into music.
Right. The deprivation of the flesh is supposed to feed the spiritual and creative output. Cole is telling Wyatt to bottleneck his physical desires so that the pressure forces a creative explosion.
But the celibacy isn't working. Wyatt isn't producing brilliant music. He's just miserable, frustrated, and blocked.
He's just suffering.
Right. That is, until the spark finally happens. And it doesn't happen in a recording studio. It happens during a late-night conversation on the dock in Tahoe.
Such a classic romance trope, but used so well here.
It starts so innocently. The house is packed. Neither of them can sleep, so they wander outside to the water. And they just talk. They talk until 3 in the morning, then 4, then 5, watching the sun come up over the lake.
There's a massive psychological shift that occurs during late-night conversations.
Like the 3 a.m. deep talks.
Exactly. When the rest of the world is asleep, the boundaries we maintain during the day begin to dissolve. The darkness provides a sense of anonymity, and physical exhaustion lowers cognitive defenses.
So you just say whatever's on your mind.
You do. Wyatt displays a level of vulnerability on that dock that he has never shared with anyone else. He admits his deepest, most closely guarded fear. He tells Blake, "I'm sort of scared of being known, really known. Every time someone gets close, I feel this urge to run."
He confesses his fear of disappointing people. He openly acknowledges his own avoidant attachment style, basically admitting that he is the worst possible person to be in a relationship with.
And how does Blake react?
She doesn't try to fix him. She doesn't judge him. She doesn't offer platitudes. She just listens. And suddenly, the massive block in Wyatt's brain breaks. The dam shatters, and he starts hearing music again.
The emotional intimacy precedes the creative breakthrough. It's a vital sequence of events.
But this introduces a massive conflict, courtesy of his mentor, Cole.
Cole is such a fascinating antagonist here.
He really is. When Wyatt finally manages to write a good song and sends it off, Cole calls him immediately. And Cole doesn't just compliment the melody. Cole says, that song is about a living, breathing woman, and she, my friend, is your muse.
And then Cole delivers this incredibly strict, ominous warning.
Yes. He tells Wyatt, you can't screw the muse.
He backs this up with a cautionary tale about a past fling Wyatt had with a Vegas blackjack dealer named Tansy.
Oh, right, Tansy.
Tansy inspired Wyatt for weeks, but the exact moment he actually slept with her, the mystery vanished, the inspiration died, and he couldn't write another note for months. Cole insists that giving in to the physical desire will instantly extinguish the creative fire.
Which is such an intense, toxic amount of pressure to place on a budding connection.
It really is.
I want to look closely at the actual lyrical evidence the author provides us, because we get to see Wyatt's handwritten notebook pages. It is a fascinating, raw look into how he processes this overwhelming influx of emotion. We get the lyrics for a song called Stop the World.
The visual details Elle Kennedy provides are striking. We don't just see the final polished lyrics. We see a torn sheet of white-lined notebook paper, and we see the active, messy edits of an artist trying to capture a feeling.
You can see his thought process.
Exactly. Wyatt initially writes the line, "You say my name and I drop who I am." But then, right on the page, he crosses out the word drop and replaces it with forget. You say my name and I forget who I am.
The semantic distinction between those two words is so powerful. Think about it. To drop who you are implies a conscious, deliberate choice. It's like taking off a heavy coat. You decide to put it down.
Right.
But to forget who you are, that implies an overwhelming, involuntary reaction. It means the psychological impact of her merely saying his name is so profound that his entire carefully constructed identity, the guarded, cynical, wandering musician, just evaporates. His brain literally cannot hold on to his ego when she speaks to him.
It is a total surrender of the self. And this vulnerability is compounded in another song he writes, titled You Know.
Oh, that one is rough to read.
The lyrics are deeply confessional, almost a form of self-flagellation. He writes, "I'm not good enough for you. I drink too much and talk too fast. I was somebody once, but I think I forgot."
He is using the music as a proxy. He's confessing all the deep-seated inadequacies that he can't bring himself to articulate in regular conversation.
Because the music is safe.
Exactly. He sees Blake's stability, her goodness, her quiet strength, and he feels entirely unworthy of it. But reading all this raises a massive red flag for me. I have to question the very concept of a muse.
It's a critical lens to apply here.
Is labeling someone a muse actually just a romanticized form of objectification? Does it reduce this incredibly complex, living, breathing woman Blake with her deep love for podcasts, her introverted nature, her completely justified grievances over a stolen toaster into nothing more than a battery pack for someone else's creativity?
It's a really good question.
It feels like it strips her of her humanity and
Yeah.
turns her into a resource to be mined.
The historical context of the muse absolutely supports your suspicion. Oh yeah. In art history, all the way back to Greek mythology, the concept of the muse inherently strips the woman of her agency. She is positioned as a passive, ethereal vessel whose only purpose is to be consumed by the male genius.
Wow, consumed is a strong word, but it fits.
She provides the spark, he creates the masterpiece, and she is relegated to the footnotes. And what is so compelling about this narrative is that Wyatt isn't entirely ignorant of this toxic dynamic.
No, he knows exactly what he's doing.
In a highly charged moment, right before they cross a major physical boundary, Wyatt looks at Blake and tells her, "I'm going to ruin you."
That line gives me absolute chills. It is so bleak.
It is a moment of acute, devastating self-awareness. Wyatt knows his own patterns. He knows he consumes people and leaves them behind.
So why does he proceed?
By clinging to the label of muse, Wyatt is desperately trying to categorize her to maintain a semblance of control. He is using that label as a psychological loophole.
Oh, I see.
He can tell himself, "I'm not actually falling in love with my best friend's daughter. She is just a temporary muse inspiring my art." It allows him to justify his sudden, all-consuming obsession with her while keeping one foot firmly out the door.
But despite all of his self-awareness, despite knowing he is a walking red flag, and despite Cole's dire warnings that sex will kill the music, the gravitational pull between Blake and Wyatt simply becomes too strong.
They can't fight it forever.
They completely abandon logic, ignore the red flags, and dive headfirst into a secluded summer romance. To understand how they get away with this, we have to look at the environment. We enter the Tahoe crucible.
The setting is functioning as an environmental pressure cooker. They are inhabiting this massive lake house, but it is packed to the brim with extended family.
It's so crowded.
The atmosphere is chaotic, loud, and hyper-extroverted. You have this intense event called the Graham Fam Jam badminton tournament taking over the lawn. Wyatt's father, Garrett, is hyper-competitive, aggressively demanding that a Graham must win the tournament.
It is sensory overload. You have the presence of the so-called golden boys, Bo, AJ, and Gray.
Oh, the Golden Boys.
These are young, rowdy, physically imposing hockey stars who are constantly doing backflips off the swim platform and dominating the physical space. It is a world that demands extroversion. Blake even gets unwillingly roped into partnering with AJ for this incredibly aggressive badminton tournament.
And this environment triggers a very specific psychological response. When highly introverted people, or people harboring intense secret emotions, are thrust into overwhelming hyper-extroverted environments, they often engage in what we might loosely compare to a form of micro-isolation.
They build a bubble.
They build a bubble. Against the backdrop of shouting families and flying shuttlecocks, Blake and Wyatt carve out a completely insulated, secret world.
Like hiding in plain sight.
Exactly. They are physically present in the chaos, but psychologically they are entirely tethered to each other. They sneak around the massive house, they meet in the quiet boathouse, they have entire silent conversations via text message from across crowded rooms.
And this secret, insulated world reaches its absolute apex in the lighthouse scene.
Oh, the lighthouse.
This sequence is a masterclass in atmospheric tension. A massive, violent storm rolls in over Lake Tahoe. The rain is blinding, the lightning is crashing, and Blake and Wyatt are forced to take sudden shelter in this creaky, abandoned lighthouse on the property.
The environmental shift is profound. They are removed from the noise of the family and plunged into elemental isolation. They are physically trapped together by forces entirely outside of their control.
Blake has this brilliant internal monologue where she describes the atmosphere perfectly. She calls it Jane Austen meets National Geographic.
Such a great description.
Right. And Elle Kennedy weaves in this fascinating fictionalized lore for the book, There's a local legend that the lighthouse is haunted by the ghost of a woman named Darley.
The ghost story adds such a cool layer.
The story goes that Darley's spirit supposedly acts as a supernatural matchmaker, bringing true lovers together during storms. It adds this incredibly moody, almost gothic texture to their isolation.
The ghost of Darley and the violent storm serve as atmospheric catalysts. Psychologically, this mirrors a phenomenon known as the misattribution of arousal.
Wait, unpack that for me. Misattribution of arousal.
Yes. When humans are in high stress or highly dramatic situations, like a terrifying thunderstorm, their heart rate elevates, adrenaline spikes, and often the brain misinterprets that physiological arousal and attributes it to the person they are with, accelerating feelings of intense attraction and intimacy.
So the storm makes them think they're more into each other.
Essentially, yes. The fear and excitement of the storm get mapped onto their romantic feelings. In this incredibly charged liminal space, we actually get to see Wyatt's creative process happen in real time.
Yes. He doesn't pull out a notebook. He just starts spontaneously humming and making up lyrics on the spot, drawing directly from the environment around them. This is the birth of the song that will eventually become Lightkeeper.
He sings, "The ocean's wild, but her eyes are calm, guiding me home like a beacon in the storm."
It's beautiful.
We eventually see his handwritten drafts of this song, and it provides brilliant insight into the duality of the artist's mind. He writes a deeply vulnerable section, and we'll leave the lamp burning long after the storm strays, just in case someone else needs to find the way.
Which is so poetic and sweet.
But right next to those raw lyrics, he has scribbled an editorial note in the margin. Cut this. Might be overkill.
I love that detail. It perfectly captures the internal war between the artist who feels everything and the critic who is terrified of being perceived as weak or overly sentimental.
He's censoring himself.
He is pouring his raw soul onto the page, but his defense mechanism is constantly hovering over his shoulder with a red pen whispering, "Don't expose yourself too much."
But in the physical reality of the lighthouse, surrounded by the storm and the ghost of Darley, the defenses finally fail. They cross the line. They agree to act on this massive physical tension.
However, because they are both profoundly terrified of the fallout, Wyatt fears losing his muse and his freedom, Blake fears losing her heart and the family dynamic, they attempt to mitigate the risks.
By making rules.
They establish strict, explicit rules of engagement for their physical relationship.
Ah, yes, the famous rules of the casual fling.
Rule number 1. The arrangement absolutely definitively ends the moment the summer vacation ends. They agree to no strings attached, no messy questions asked, and absolutely no explanations required when September arrives.
They're attempting to put a hard, logical expiration date on their physical and emotional connection.
Which is, this is a textbook behavioral attempt to manage existential anxiety.
It absolutely is.
Let me push back on the very logic of these characters for a second. Think about every story you've ever heard, or maybe even your own life. Have casually agreed upon rules ever actually protected anyone's heart in the history of human romance?
Never. Literally never.
Right. Or do these rules just serve as a fragile, ticking countdown timer to an inevitable, catastrophic emotional explosion? You cannot draft a legal contract for your nervous system. You can't just mandate that your dopamine and oxytocin receptors will neatly shut off on September 1st.
You are entirely correct. If we connect this to the broader spectrum of human behavior, setting rules in a casual romantic relationship is almost always an illusion of control. It is a psychological pacifier.
We just tell ourselves it'll be fine.
We tell ourselves, if I define the boundaries clearly enough, I won't get hurt. But human attachment does not operate on a calendar. What is truly fascinating here is how these arbitrary rules specifically affect Wyatt.
Because of Cole's warning.
Exactly. Remember Cole's dire warning, the idea that sex kills the muse. Wyatt fully internalized that. He expected that sleeping with Blake would finally break the fever.
He views the physical consummation as a cure for his obsession. He thought if he just gave in to it, the mystery would vanish and he could get back to his guarded life.
Yes. He assumed physical reality would extinguish the ethereal inspiration. But the exact opposite happens. Instead of the music dying, the inspiration violently multiplies.
It's like pouring gasoline on a fire.
The physical intimacy acts as an accelerant. He tells Blake, "Since you got to Tahoe, I've been writing nonstop, and none of it is trash." He realizes that the physical connection isn't draining his creativity, it's feeding it.
Every time he touches her, the emotional stakes deepen and the music flows stronger.
The rules they set become instantly obsolete because the art and the intimacy are feeding each other in a continuous, uncontrollable feedback loop.
They built this perfect, insulated bubble in Tahoe. It protects them from the chaotic family, the badminton tournaments, the expectations of their fathers. But a bubble that protects you from the outside world cannot protect you from the rot on the inside.
No, it can't.
It cannot withstand the deep-seated, festering insecurities that Blake has been carrying for years.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the inevitable rupture, the moment the fragile rules shatter completely.
The irony of the rupture is that it doesn't happen because they get caught by their parents or because the family dynamic explodes.
Which is what you'd expect in this kind of story.
Right. But the rupture happens because Wyatt does something truly brave. He attempts to completely break his own fuckboy code. He crosses the ultimate emotional line.
He says it.
He looks at Blake, strips away all the cynicism, and genuinely confesses, "I love you." He admits that he doesn't know exactly when it happened, maybe it's been happening forever, but he finally finds the courage to say the words out loud.
And Blake's reaction is the most shocking pivot in the narrative.
It really catches you off guard.
After spending weeks in Tahoe sneaking around with him, after admitting she has been harboring an agonizing crush on him since she was 16 years old, when he finally hands her the exact phrase she has supposedly always wanted to hear, she doesn't embrace him.
She completely rejects him.
She aggressively pushes him away.
To understand this reaction, we have to unpack the deep layers of her psychology. Blake fundamentally does not believe his confession is real.
Her brain literally cannot process it as truth.
She accuses Wyatt of only being in love with the idea of her as his muse. She analyzes his history as a tortured songwriter, and she concludes that Wyatt doesn't actually want a healthy, sustainable, mundane relationship with her.
She thinks he needs the drama.
She believes he subconsciously craves the tragic angst of a doomed, impossible romance because that is what fuels his art. She thinks she's just fodder for his next album.
And this is the moment where all that childhood baggage we discussed earlier comes roaring back to the surface. She rips open her own psyche and confesses her deepest, darkest fears to him.
It's such a raw scene.
She feels painfully ordinary. She says, I want someone to need me, not just love me. I want to be wanted so badly it hurts. I want to be someone's obsession, their undoing.
She wants to be the main event.
Exactly. She is absolutely terrified of just being a safe place for him to land. She doesn't want to be the steady plus one simply because she is John Logan's daughter, which makes her familiar and convenient.
She tells him with devastating clarity, I want to be the thing they lose themselves in.
It is a profound articulation of a very common human fear. The fear of being a supporting character in your own life.
Blake feels like Wyatt is the main event. He is the tortured, brilliant artist destined for greatness, and she views herself as the reliable, slightly boring girl next door whose only purpose was to cure his writer's block.
She doesn't want to be the audience anymore. She wants to be the spotlight.
But she doesn't believe she is inherently worthy of being the spotlight.
Let me offer an analogy to explain why she rejects what she wants most.
Okay, let's hear it.
Imagine someone who has been starving for years. They've been walking alone in a barren desert, absolutely desperate for a single drop of water, a single crumb of affection. But when they are finally rescued and led into an absolute feast, a massive banquet of everything they have ever dreamed of, their stomach violently rejects the food.
Because the body can't handle it.
Yes. Their biological system is so compromised by starvation that it can't process the rich nourishment. Blake wanted Wyatt's love so intensely for so long that when it finally arrived, her emotional system was too compromised by insecurity to trust that it wouldn't poison her.
That is an incredibly accurate psychological framing. It's the paradox of self-sabotage. And we must validate Blake's defensive mechanism here. It is very easy for a reader to shout at the book, just tell him you love him back.
It's so frustrating to read.
But look at the empirical data Blake is working with. Wyatt has openly, repeatedly admitted to her that he leaves broken hearts in his wake. He has a documented track record of getting bored, feeling trapped, and running away.
He literally warned her on the dock that he was going to ruin her.
Exactly. Why on earth should her nervous system trust that this time, with her, he has magically changed?
She is preemptively rejecting him to protect herself from the inevitable catastrophic drop when he inevitably gets bored and leaves. She is choosing the immediate pain of walking away over the agonizing suspense of waiting for him to drop her.
But the true agonizing tragedy of this rupture is that Wyatt has actually fundamentally changed.
He really has.
The vulnerability he shared on the dock, the shared creation of art in the lighthouse, the dismantling of his celibacy, It completely rewired his attachment style. When Blake gives her heartbreaking speech about wanting to be the spotlight, Wyatt looks at her with complete sincerity and says, "You are the fucking spotlight."
He tries so hard to convince her.
He desperately tries to assure her that she is his obsession. But the historical trauma of being called kid, combined with the deep insecurity of being the convenient plus one, creates a wall too thick for his words to penetrate.
So she walks away,
She rigorously enforces the end of their summer rules. They pack up, and they are forced apart.
which catapults us into our final act, the grand gesture and the resolution. We fast forward several months to November. The Tahoe summer bubble is long gone. Reality has set in.
The fallout period.
Wyatt is back in Nashville, and ironically, because of the pain of the breakup, he is finally succeeding. He is teamed up with a massive, highly respected producer named Toby Dodson. The album, fueled by his love and loss of Blake, is rapidly coming together.
And Elle Kennedy uses this period of success to administer a crucial behavioral test for Wyatt.
We need to see if the change stuck.
We need to see proof of his internal growth. Wyatt attends a high-profile charity event in Nashville, and he ends up secluded in an empty ballroom with a woman named Molly May.
Who is a massive deal in this universe.
Molly May is a massive A-list pop star. She's incredibly famous, staggeringly gorgeous, and enormously talented. They sit together at a piano, they mess around with some complex melodies, and their voices harmonize perfectly.
It's picture perfect.
It is the exact kind of electric artistic connection that used to dictate and consume Wyatt's entire romantic life.
And Molly May makes her move. She literally climbs onto the top of the grand piano, wraps her legs around Wyatt, and kisses him. It is the ultimate intoxicating rock star fantasy handed to him on a silver platter.
It's everything you used to want.
The old Wyatt, the Wyatt from before Tahoe, the fuckboy till he dies. Wyatt would have absolutely lost himself in that moment without a second thought.
But he doesn't.
He doesn't.
He allows the kiss for perhaps 10 seconds before he physically stops it. He pulls back. He realizes in that moment that his physiological response and his emotional core are in complete harmony. They are both violently rejecting this scenario.
He feels nothing for her.
He looks at this gorgeous, famous, available pop star and tells her flatly, "I'm in love with someone else."
It is the ultimate proof.
It is behavioral evidence that his feelings for Blake were not merely a byproduct of a claustrophobic summer setting or a temporary obsession with a muse. The distance, the time, and the temptation have proven exactly how permanent his internal shift is.
Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away in Boston, Blake is absolutely miserable. She is sitting alone, listening to the leaked or early tracks of the songs Wyatt wrote about her on an endless loop.
Just torturing herself.
It is shredding her heart. And in her despair, she gets some incredibly surprising advice from an unexpected source. Her father, John Logan.
Which is a huge deal.
Now, context is important here. John is fiercely, famously protective of his daughter. Remember, he was the one who saw right through Isaac, the mullet guy, correctly identifying him as a walking red flag.
John Logan is highly perceptive, and when he sees his daughter completely broken over Wyatt, he doesn't blame Wyatt.
Which is shocking for an overprotective dad.
He realizes that Blake is the architect of her own misery, that she pushed Wyatt away out of deep-seated insecurity. In a profound moment of parental insight, John breaks his usual protective cycle. He tells his proud, stubborn, introverted daughter that she needs to fix it. He literally advises her to grovel.
Which is wild coming from him, but it's the exact push she needs. John recognizes that her pride and her fear are the only things standing between her and the love of her life. And this parental permission sets the stage for the climactic, very public reunion.
The setting of the climax is critical. Wyatt is in Boston, doing a live, high-profile radio interview to kick off his massive new tour.
The stakes are so high.
He is in the studio with two morning show hosts, Huey and Ashley, who are aggressively grilling him about the emotional depth of the new album. Wyatt, trying to maintain his professional media training, slips up. He accidentally admits on live air that the songs are about a real girl, his specific muse.
And right as the hosts are relentlessly pressing him for a name, the producer patches a caller through. It's Blake. She has called into a live, syndicated radio show.
We have to closely analyze the exact words of her public confession because they represent the absolute culmination of her character arc.
She doesn't just say, I'm sorry.
She doesn't just call in and offer a generic apology. She speaks directly to her deepest psychological wound. She says, I love the way you look at me like I'm worth writing songs about. I miss being seen by you.
I miss being seen by you. It is such a staggeringly powerful line. She spent her entire life trying to shrink, feeling invisible, blending into the background as the quiet introvert or the convenient plus one.
And Wyatt was the one who saw her.
He was the very first person to truly, deeply, piercingly look at her and recognize her inherent value. And then we get the cinematic payoff. Wyatt abandons the interview, runs out of the studio, and bursts into the lobby of the radio station.
And what is Blake wearing when he finds her?
She is standing there wearing his old band hoodie. It is a massive physical symbol. By wearing his hoodie in public, she is physically claiming him. She's no longer hiding.
It's a huge step for her.
Wyatt runs to her, assures her once again that she is his absolute obsession, and they kiss right there in the brightly lit lobby, completely ignoring the radio staff and the rest of the world.
It is a moment of pure, triumphant, cathartic release. But I know, based on our earlier discussions of Blake's personality, you have a critical question about the mechanics of this specific finale.
I do, because I have been wrestling with this. Why did it have to be a public grand gesture?
It's a fair question.
Let's think about this logically. Blake is famously proudly introverted. She hates attention. She has stated repeatedly that she does not want to be the center of attention. So why on earth did she have to call into a live radio show, broadcasting her most fragile, vulnerable feelings to thousands of strangers commuting to work just to win him back? Couldn't she have just texted him to meet her at a quiet, dimly lit coffee shop?
It is the most important question to ask regarding her character development. If we connect this action to the broader arc of her psychological journey, the intensely public nature of the gesture isn't just a romantic comedy trope. It's absolutely essential to her healing.
How so?
It directly answers and neutralizes her core insecurity. Think back to her devastating confession in Tahoe. What was her greatest fear?
That she was destined to be a steady plus one.
Exactly. Forever hidden in the shadows, while Wyatt soaked up the adoration of the glowing crowds.
Okay, I see the matrix now. By doing it publicly, she is proving something to herself.
Precisely. By forcing herself to declare her love on a live radio broadcast, she is forcefully, violently stepping out of the safe background. She is engaging in the ultimate form of emotional exposure therapy.
She is confronting her deepest fear head-on.
She is publicly claiming the spotlight right alongside him. She is telling the massive audience, and more importantly, she is proving to Wyatt and herself that she is finally brave enough to be the main subject of his life. She's refusing to be just a secret muse hidden away in a dark Tahoe boathouse. She is fully accepting the terrifying vulnerability of being known.
Wow. That completely reframes the entire climax for me. It transforms what could be seen as a cheesy rom-com trope into a profound, necessary act of character growth. She had to do the thing that terrified her most to prove she was ready for the relationship.
And that ultimately summarizes the immense power of Elle Kennedy's love song. It is not merely a narrative about a steamy, forbidden summer romance.
It's so much more than that.
It is a rigorous, deep psychological exploration of the terrifying vulnerability required to let someone truly see you. It examines the immense courage it takes to step out of the safe audience and demand to become the subject of the art.
And what makes it so brilliant is how universally relatable it is. You don't have to be dating a rock star to understand these mechanics. We all have those arbitrary rules we construct to protect ourselves from getting hurt.
We all build those firewalls.
We all build massive, complex firewalls based on past projections, whether we were humiliatingly called a kid at 16 or burned by a cheating partner with a bad haircut in college. At some point in our lives, we all have to face that terrifying binary choice.
The choice between safety and connection.
Do we stay safe, insulated and comfortable in the background, angrily nursing our stolen toasters? Or do we risk absolute catastrophic emotional annihilation to step into the bright burning spotlight with someone who truly sees us?
It is the fundamental, unavoidable risk of human connection. The book brilliantly asks us to interrogate our own defense mechanisms. Are we actually protecting ourselves from harm? Or are we just keeping ourselves isolated from the very intimacy we desperately crave?
It is such a beautiful, messy, deeply complicated story about getting out of your own way. But before we wrap up today's deep dive, I want to leave you with a final lingering thought. A question for you to ponder long after you take your headphones off and go back to your day.
Always good to leave them thinking.
We have spent this entire time talking about the magic of the muse, the explosive, lightning in a bottle inspiration of the Tahoe summer bubble, and the grand, public, adrenaline-fueled declaration of love.
The cinematic climax of the romance.
Exactly. But here's the reality check that exists beyond the final page. When your entire blossoming relationship, including your deepest insecurities, your private dockside confessions, and your most intimate moments, is immortalized in a hit album.
When millions of strangers are streaming your heartbreak and your reconciliation on Spotify.
Right. How do you navigate a normal Tuesday? What happens to the dynamic when the magical, volatile muse and artist phase inevitably transitions into the mundane reality of cohabitation?
When you are paying bills, arguing over whose turn it is to empty the dishwasher, and folding laundry together.
Yes. How does a love built on the foundation of explosive, chaotic, artistic inspiration sustain itself in the quiet, unglamorous, repetitive moments of a shared life?
That is the ultimate test of any grand romance, the difficult daily transition from poetry to practice.
Something for you to mull over. Until next time, remember that the world of human emotion is never clean and binary. It is not just a matter of being broken or unbroken. It is messy, it is full of contradictions, it is beautifully complicated, and sometimes the absolute best thing you can do for yourself is just let your firewall down, embrace the terrifying spotlight, and see what happens. Thanks for diving deep with us.